Well, in honor of the Academy Awards show this Sunday, tonight, I would like to commemorate the moment 50 years ago that transformed the Oscar telecast into what it is today. A 4-hour lecture on how bad most people have it by the people who have it the best. You rail against privilege, but you avail yourself of the greatest privilege of all, to remain clueless. Dave Chappelle lashed out at me last month because I called him out for saying there was more free speech in Saudi Arabia than here. Well, I was right. What he said was stupid. America has many problems, including free speech issues on both left and right, but we're real different than Saudi Arabia. If you don't believe me, try opening a lesbian art gallery there.
Bill Maher has finally dropped a series of explosive revelations, leaving Hollywood in a full-blown dilemma. As we all know, the once vibrant movie industry has steadily taken a nosedive, and Maher believes no one is to blame but Hollywood itself. His revelations are sharp, eye-opening, and brutally honest. And we've got every clip, so hit the subscribe button, buckle up, and let's get started.
I just got a Golden Globe nomination for the one I did.
Oh, really?
That's my, yesterday.
How often do you get nominated for your specials?
Nothing. I used to get nominated for everything, and then the wokeness came in, and then I was considered conservative. Which
are you bad?
Ridiculous. So I was what I call soft canceled.
Yeah.
Where you don't
Well, I'm a Bill Clinton liberal, which is from the 90s, which is now called a Nazi.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
You're a white supremacist.
So this is the first time in a while I've been nominated for something.
Okay.
Which I think shows a little bit that we are coming out of the wokeness.
Maher's first explosive revelation came when he told his guests, David Spade and Dana Carvey, that he had been quietly sidelined by Hollywood insiders who suddenly decided he was a conservative. And why did they reach that conclusion? Not because Maher switched parties, but because he dared to criticize his own side, far left. According to Maher, simply questioning progressive orthodoxy was enough to make people uncomfortable, distant, and quietly dismissive. No dramatic cancellation announcement, no public backlash, just fewer invites, colder rooms, and an unspoken label stamped on his forehead. Maher made it clear that his sin wasn't conservatism, but disobedience. In today's Hollywood, stepping outside the approved narrative is treated as ideological betrayal. By calling out excesses on the left, Maher found himself pushed to the margins, proving his larger point. In an industry that claims to champion free expression, independent thought is only welcome if it stays safely in line.
No, it's not one that the woke can watch and not throw up, because I call their shit out. And the fact that people are laughing shows that it's funny. When you do stupid things, it's funny, and the left did a lot more stupid things in the last 5 to 10 years. And I'm a comedian. I go where the gold is. And it's hitting the side of a barn to make fun of some of this shit.
Sure, it's too easy.
If you think, I quoted like very esteemed publications like The Atlantic, or saying things like, separating sports by sex doesn't make sense. Well, if that's not of course it does. If anybody can't do 5 minutes on that, or Mr. Beast, who was helping disabled people, and the Washington Post guy was tweeting like, he thinks disability is something that needs to be solved.
Maher never backed down or softened his stance. Instead, he doubled down. He continued taking sharp jabs at the industry, unapologetically calling out its hypocrisy, and even devoted a significant portion of his most recent comedy special to tearing into what he sees as woke Hollywood excesses. While others might have pulled punches to stay in good standing, Maher leaned into the backlash, using it as fuel rather than a warning. That's what makes the latest twist so ironic. After sidelining him for years, Hollywood suddenly turned around and nominated him for an award once again. Maher openly admitted he found the move fascinating, if not absurd. The same industry that quietly pushed him aside for speaking out now appears eager to reclaim him, raising the question of whether Hollywood's principles are firm or flexible when it becomes convenient. Anyways, he had the opportunity to be at the event, and he created even more drama.
Walking in, some reporter asked me why I wasn't wearing a lapel pin for the first Minneapolis shooting a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, it was a terrible thing that happened, and it shouldn't have happened, and if they didn't act like such thugs, it wouldn't have had to happen, but I don't need to wear a pin about it. Now, please understand, I had no idea this question was coming. And so tonight, I'd like to say that if I had the chance to think about it, my answer would be exactly the same. I hope I didn't spoil the perfect record of pins and ribbons solving all the world's problems.
Maher argues that Hollywood is far more interested in performative activism than in taking real, meaningful action, and he wants no part of it. To him, the industry's obsession with symbolic gestures has replaced genuine problem solving. He questions what any of it actually accomplishes. How does wearing a pin at an award show fix deep-rooted issues in Minneapolis? How does draping a keffiyeh over a designer suit in America do anything to solve a complex conflict in Palestine? Maher's point isn't to dismiss serious causes, but to expose the emptiness of virtue signaling that stops at optics. In his view, these gestures exist to make celebrities feel morally validated, not to create real change. Hollywood congratulates itself for raising awareness, then moves on to the next trend, never addressing the hard, uncomfortable work that real solutions require. For Maher, activism without action is just performance. And performance, he argues, is Hollywood's favorite illusion.
You can't name a problem from guns to AIDS to bullying to breast cancer that still exists after people wore a ribbon for it. Except all of them. You fucking poser. 3 years ago, everybody was all into Ukrainian flags. What happened to that? Another cause tossed into the junk drawer with yesterday's choke collar? Get out of here with your virtue-signaling body ornaments. They're just crucifixes for liberals. Because every time I see one, I think, Jesus Christ.
Maher didn't mince words when describing Hollywood celebrities, branding many of them as purely performative with no real intention of fighting for any cause. According to him, their activism isn't driven by conviction, but by imitation. One celebrity wears a pin, and suddenly everyone else rushes to grab one too, not out of belief, but out of fear of standing out. Maher even suggested that some of them likely had no idea why the pin was being worn in the first place, but wore it anyway without understanding the cause. In his view, this herd mentality exposes how shallow much of Hollywood's activism really is. It's less about understanding issues or pushing for change, and more about social survival and image management. Maher argues that when activism becomes a fashion accessory, it loses all meaning and credibility.
But, congratulations for raising awareness. The awareness you really care about, which is how wonderful you are. Ricky Gervais once told the award show crowd, "Don't use it as a platform to make a political speech. You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world." Of course, this is where celebrities say, "How dare you? We're citizens with just as much right to speak out." Agreed. You absolutely do. I'm just saying, don't. It's having the opposite effect of what you want.
Maher went on to explain that Hollywood's brand of woke activism is not just hollow, but actively hurting the movies and TV shows the industry produces. According to him, audiences have caught on. Viewers no longer see celebrities as credible voices on real-world issues because they're painfully disconnected from everyday life. As a result, people simply don't take them seriously anymore. Maher argues that what was once meant to appear compassionate now comes across as patronizing, as if wealthy stars are lecturing regular people from a moral high ground they've never earned. Even worse, he says, the hypocrisy is impossible to ignore. Celebrities preach sacrifice, fairness, and accountability while living cushioned lives untouched by the consequences of the policies they promote. This growing disconnect has eroded trust, and that loss of trust is bleeding into entertainment itself. When audiences feel talked down to, they stop listening, and eventually they stop watching altogether.
You rail against privilege, but you avail yourself of the greatest privilege of all, to remain clueless. Dave Chappelle lashed out at me last month because I called him out for saying there was more free speech in Saudi Arabia than here. Well, I was right. What he said was stupid. America has many problems, including free speech issues on both left and right, but we're real different than Saudi Arabia. If you don't believe me, try opening a lesbian art gallery there.
Bill Maher then turned his attention to Dave Chappelle, calling him out for a claim suggesting that there is more free speech in Saudi Arabia than in the United States. Maher found the remark especially baffling, given the vastly different human rights records of the two countries. One is built on constitutional protections for speech, while the other is known for punishing dissent harshly. Maher pointed out that this isn't a complicated comparison, which makes Chappelle's comment all the more surprising. You would expect someone with his platform and influence to understand that distinction, But according to Maher, he clearly missed the mark. This, Maher argues, is exactly why so many people have stopped looking up to celebrities as moral or intellectual guides. When famous voices make sweeping, ill-informed statements, they don't sound brave or insightful. They sound disconnected, and that growing sense of cluelessness has steadily eroded public trust in celebrity commentary.
To come up with new categories for the awards. The Golden Globes came up with a new one this year that basically picture people liked. They had, they had become such self-congratulating, virtue-signaling bores that they had to go, oh yeah, let's make a category for that. People actually paid to see something great. So there's some new Oscar categories. Would you like to hear the Oscar category?
According to Maher, Hollywood has become so obsessed with award culture that it started inventing categories that feel completely meaningless, simply to feed that addiction. What was once meant to celebrate excellence has turned into an endless participation exercise, where everyone gets recognized for something, no matter how trivial. Maher argues that this dilution has quietly stripped awards of their prestige and purpose. Viewers, he says, aren't blind to it either. Many now see these bloated ceremonies as self-indulgent, useless spectacles designed more to flatter insiders than to honor real achievement. Instead of celebrating great storytelling, performances, or craftsmanship, award shows increasingly feel like inside jokes for an out-of-touch elite. As a result, audiences are tuning out in droves, uninterested in sitting through hours of self-congratulation. Maher's larger point is clear. When everything is labeled award-worthy, nothing truly is, and Hollywood only has itself to blame for viewers no longer caring.
New rule in honor of the Academy Awards show this Sunday. Tonight, I would like to commemorate the moment 50 years ago that transformed the Oscar telecast into what it is today. A 4-hour lecture on how bad most people have it by the people who have it the best. I'm constantly amazed when I rewatch movies from only a decade or so ago, and they were made in a way that today would get you burned at the Twitter stake.
Yep, Hollywood has become so woke that its movies have followed the same path. According to Maher's line of thinking, films are no longer focused on entertaining audiences or even subtly educating them through storytelling. Instead, they've turned into thinly disguised lectures, obsessed with pushing one cause or another. Characters don't feel real anymore. They feel like mouthpieces. Dialogue sounds less like natural conversation and more like a social media thread brought to life on screen. For many viewers, the magic of cinema has been replaced by moral instruction, and that shift has drained movies of their fun, surprise, and emotional depth. Audiences don't go to the theater to be scolded or politically corrected. They go to escape, to laugh, to feel something genuine. Maher's point is that when messaging takes priority over story, everyone loses. The result is predictable plots, shallow characters, and an industry wondering why people have stopped showing up.
It's complicated. From 2009, to name just one of many I could choose, was made by a who's who of the most blue ribbon certified Hollywood liberals, woke approved and Democratic Party contributing, from the stars to the producers to the director. But it apparently occurred to none of them to have any kind of minority in the cast. You would need a divining rod to find a person of color within 500 feet of this movie set.
In the end, Maher's broader argument is simple but damning. Hollywood has lost touch with the very people it's supposed to entertain. From performative activism and hollow award shows to clueless celebrity commentary and preachy movies, the industry has replaced authenticity with self-importance. Instead of telling compelling stories, Hollywood now seems more interested in signaling virtue, lecturing audiences, and congratulating itself. Viewers have noticed, and they're responding the only way they can, by tuning out. Box office numbers drop, award show ratings collapse, and public trust continues to erode. Maher isn't arguing against progress or meaningful causes. He's arguing against hypocrisy, shallow gestures, and messaging that drowns out storytelling. His criticism cuts deeper because it comes from someone who once belonged comfortably inside that system. If Hollywood wants to recover its relevance, Maher suggests it needs to stop preaching, stop posing, and start listening again. Otherwise, the decline won't just continue, it will accelerate.